Welcome to Awakenings, episode 1, part 2 of Who Are We to Teach? We're going to be diving more into the respect that has to be earned by anyone that assists you or offers insider understanding or judgments. So we're going to be talking about more of that today, just so we don't have to necessarily fall into being judged or fall victim to another person's assessment or judgment. So this is more about earning the right to be respected and heard, so for your own protection. So I hope you enjoy. Understandably, when your child's suffering, you want them to overcome that suffering as quick as possible. You want them to say, "Oh, never give up. It's worth fighting for."
Definitely.
Because we naturally take on the burdens of our children. And it's like, well, as long as they're suffering, I don't want to. Like, I'd rather go through the pain that my child's feeling rather than them, Yeah. You naturally want to.
Mm-hmm.
So when a child's suffering and not coping emotionally, the parent says, "Come on, get over it." Even subconsciously, get over it, just let it go. And then it's like, and then if the child can bury it, and if there's no coping mechanisms or no way to work through it, then the child will just bury that. And then the parent goes, "Oh, good, they're not talking about it now. I can move on." So it's not a callous thing. It's not that they want the child to suffer. It's almost like they're suffering. A lot of people are suffering in their own, lost in their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own thinking, like everything, and feel burdened. And then to feel your child in pain, emotionally or any other way, just intensifies your own suffering. So naturally, we want our children to overcome that as soon as possible. So we put pressure on them, and that doesn't help at all. And this is why I'm saying that if you allow yourself time, loosen some of your own load. And it's hard to really keep it short in a nutshell. It's really hard.
Yeah.
That's probably a 2-hour conversation almost, but imperative. And this is what I wanted to talk about. If someone's defending their way, this is a lot to take in. But if I'm defending my way, then there's no way you can convince me of anything else, and I'm not open to that possibility. So when I say, or in my experience, that everything comes down to a misunderstanding in self, it doesn't mean you can force your view on another and make them understand so the suffering goes away. If people aren't open to what you have to say, you've got to look at a few things: how often it happens, if there's potential for them to understand themselves, well, particularly you, but they've got to be willing to unravel and understand themselves, because they can't blame another ultimately. We'll talk about that more another time.
I think that's key though. And I think especially with parents, especially if you've got more than one kid, parents are super busy. They're in parent mode, and this has got to be done, that's got to be done, these people got to be paid, these kids got to be there, this kid's got to be there, you've got to wear this. You're in parent mode and just getting through the day. And I think so many parents lose that connection because they're so busy getting through the day every day. And that's where you lose track of the kids sometimes. And I think to get back to that, you need to let all the other stuff just go from it and really reconnect with your child and make the time. Because I think we just need to get out of that parent mode sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. So how do you do that? Because there's a couple of things there. I agree completely. So to connect with a child, you've got to allow, if you don't give yourself, so you can be distracted by so many things, external living and the pressures of work and everything else, or whether it's a relationship or whatever's going on, or exams or anything. If you don't, so if you then just give yourself time or spend time with your child, but you have these pressures, so you either have these pressures or you're with your child, it's hard to be present, because then you're, even with your child, thinking about your issues, your problems. Yeah. It's like in the plane, they say, you've got to give yourself oxygen before your child. Yeah. Same sort of thing. You have to allow yourself time, even if it's 20 minutes a day. You have to, I truly believe, core of my being, you have to give yourself time every day, something every day, no matter how small. You have to train yourself to give yourself time to get in touch with how you're feeling, not fear it, but get in touch with it.
Mm-hmm.
Try and do something nurturing for yourself. So then after all the years of not being valued that you felt even as a child, you start valuing yourself. And this has to happen before anything else changes, in my experience. If you don't value yourself, then you're not giving yourself any value. So what you have to offer isn't as potent, because you're not really, if you're not valuing yourself, then on any level, you're not really, I don't want to get too much into identification, but you're so busy building up an identification that is fragile. It's based on what you have, what you own, what you think you are. And then it's all outside images, but there's no real substance. I'm not saying you can't have both, but when you focus on your image, then there's a trap where you can be like a shell that looks amazing, but there's underlying that, you can be dying on the inside. And I feel that the reason I'm going here is because you've got to spend time, you have to spend or commit time, make time with your child, but you have to spend time with yourself first. And even if the child says, you tell your child, look, I just need 10 minutes, 10 minutes just for myself. And then I can, it's like unpack your bags almost, that you carry around on your back all the time, all your thoughts, feelings. It's like you can let some of those, it's like if I can, you've got to, on a subtle level, your child will understand. It's like if I can loosen the weight that I'm carrying, then I can possibly take some of your burden. And all that means is you're sharing some understanding, and you're letting them unload with you and offer them understanding, because you're not, it's like the cup's full, you've got to empty some of that cup. And if you can't empty your entire cup to new possibilities, you at least empty enough of the water within so your child can fill it. So then with that, it's like, okay, so the child's cup that's full, just hearing your child and understanding rather than telling them the solution. And this is the other thing with will lighten their load. They go, wow, they actually paid attention to what I was saying. And they might not think this consciously, but on some levels, like they paid attention and they're trying to understand. And there's, and I feel, I've been in relationships before, and when your partner goes through suffering, the first thing, and I think this is a guy thing often, but not just a guy thing. It's guys tend to do it often. Like, okay, well, what's the problem? Okay, yeah, no worries. We'll just do this, this, and this. And the woman's like, I don't want you to solve it for me. I just want you to tell. I just want to share it with you. But the guy does that not because he doesn't care, because he wants her to get through the issues or the suffering as quick as possible.
But you got to be careful with that. Sorry, you got to be careful with that too, I think, because if kids feel that you're not fully hearing them, then they shut down. So it's a fine line to walk there, because you want to help them, but you really have to listen to what they want out of, them telling you.
But you can't truly help them unless you do listen to them deeply.
And you don't want the child shutting down, because they will, especially teenagers. They will shut down faster than you can swing your head around it.
And the thing is, though, I agree for sure. And the longer they've been shutting down for, the longer they're saying that, the parents sort of unknowingly putting pressure on their child to just get over it, just forget it, even though they can't. Then it's harder to unravel. Like it's like the walls around them get bigger and bigger and bigger.
That's right.
And it's not easy to bring those walls down.
That's right.
It can be done because especially within family, if you, instead of blaming or projecting, you must seek understanding first. 100%.
Yeah.
So back to the point so if you're able to spend time and empty some of your cup, so that your child can put some of their burden onto you, and just understanding them, even if you can't help them, is better than not understanding them and hoping that they get better on their, of their own volition. It's just not realistic. And it's extremely rare that would even happen. Like, it's not till they're older and they think, okay, well, there's no answers here. And this is to some degree what you and I have done, and many. There's no answers here within family. There's no answers anywhere. I have to go searching for it. But it's a risk of surviving all the way through it. It's walking a fine line between self-destruction and discovering something within.
Yeah.
And there's even on the road to discovery, there's going to be a lot of challenges, and haven't been given the tools I need along the way that well, besides just bury it, you know.
Yeah.
So, and this is, it's a tough one. But I feel, back to the point, I feel this is important to sort of round this off, that if you're with your child, you both write down, if you can both dedicate time each day and write down, when you're in the amidst, deep within the suffering, you write down how you're feeling. And then when you're not feeling so bad, because there's a trap here that when you're suffering, I don't know this myself, when I've gone through deep suffering, every single time you feel like it's going to be like that forever. You feel like it's never going to end, and it always does. And we naturally forget that we're suffering over a period of time. It does dissipate, but it doesn't mean that the problem's been solved. It just sort of gets buried, or you get distracted. And I feel, when you're in the midst of suffering, write it down. And if your parent and yourself, or even if both teenagers, or you can work together as a team, you can, when you're feeling good, then read back over the notes of how you were feeling before in the darkest place, and you will discover that a lot of the things that you're writing can be seen through. Like, what's the relevance of that? Well, you'll see that you'll start doubting your thoughts and feelings when you're suffering. You think, okay, I know it feels like this, but I've discovered that it's not as bad as what I'm thinking in this moment. So you can start, that's the way of starting to unravel. We blindly fall into believing our thoughts and not questioning them. So, and that'll be the next podcast, will be on thoughts. But I felt this is a good place to start, because it's a lot of people feel lost, and what we are teaching our friends, family, is, like, without awareness, is methods that don't really work for us. And I feel like it's, once to recap, if it's not working for you, embark with your child to find a new way. And I think, instead of burying, in my experience, instead of burying your thoughts, feelings, and suffering, just have a look at it and see how much is real. And like, as you become more adept at discovering, unraveling your thoughts and feelings, you will find ultimately, this is my experience, that all thoughts and feelings can be seen through, because no thought is real. But it's a matter of not believing you're not falling victim to your feelings and your thoughts. And this is a starting point. I feel a great starting point is by writing it down and unraveling that when you're in a space where you're feeling more neutral, more love. So you're training yourself not to fall immediately into suffering, and not to, after that experience, fear falling into it again. And without looking into evaluating this, you blindly believe what your thoughts did tell you, and then you fear it more, because you feel like there's nothing you can do about it. That's not true in my experience at all. And I've seen people being able to work through this, and I've experienced it myself. If you don't look into what you're actually feeling when you're suffering, you will fear the suffering, and that brings it back around. And then it's just a matter of, how often do I suffer? And how do I get through that? Well, people might drink, they might do other things. They might alter their mind through drugs or whatever else they might do. That's a way of sort of trying to cope, but it's like in quicksand. It's not the answer ultimately. You have to be prepared to feel and unravel your own emotions and thinking, and be prepared to do that with a loved one. And it can take pressure off. If you do it with a child or a loved one, you can actually, it's like starting with the gym and doing new techniques. You can actually start developing yourself in ways you never thought imaginable, and you can start free yourself up and living, in different ways. Your life can have more meaning. So I just took most of the stage there, Linda. Anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you. Done quite well, thank you.
Give it a go. Like, if consider what you're offering your children, and if you're suffering, then and you don't know answers, just I'd recommend, instead of coming up with solutions, purely solutions, hear your child, connect with your child, connect with yourself. As I'm not an expert, I've had a lot of experience in this area. I've written a book, Awakening's a Life's Journey, that touches on these things. I was in a finalist for India's self-help category and made the top 10. And yeah, I do touch on these things. And the thoughts, don't fall victim to your thinking and your feelings. Work to see through as many as you can and find a greater sense of feeling. And it's your journey, yours alone, but there are ways, whether you're a teenage child or whether you're an adult or at school or wherever you are. I feel this is an important point. The person that you seek advice from, if you don't respect them, then you shouldn't take for granted and respect their words. I feel respect has to be earned. And if you may not respect someone that can see you or that takes the time to understand you, you might have an idea of who you think they are or how they are. But if they can take the time to listen to what you're saying without judging you, it's probably a good idea to consider, not blindly believe, but consider what they have to offer. So I feel it's important to, as a golden rule, if someone hasn't earned your respect, don't necessarily respect what they have to offer. So if you have a friend not a friend necessarily, if you have someone that you don't get along with and they judge you and you fall victim to what they say, you don't like the fact that they may not like you or they might tease you, your heart's pure. And if you don't feel it at times, it's because you're suffering. I truly believe this. So if someone doesn't take the time to get in touch with your heart or see how you're feeling or recognize that you're suffering or you're hurting, they can't see that, which is obvious. We see, if we breathe and get in touch with how we're feeling, we can recognize it's obvious by looking at others, how they're feeling, or if they're coping, or if they're preoccupied. You have a conversation with them and they're not really listening. They just can't wait to get out what they need to say. They're not hearing you. It shows they've got a lot on their mind. So it's worth noting, absolutely worth noting, that if they haven't, the people you're speaking to, if they can't see you or can't take the time, if you feel they haven't heard you, then be cautious with what you blindly believe. So you should only respect those that earn your respect. And the true way to earn respect isn't by harming another person. It's by them having integrity, them caring and understanding how you feel and how you are. And if you're a teenage and you feel like that with your parent, it doesn't mean they don't love you. It just means, or you don't feel like they hear you or understand you. And as Linda and I spoke about, sometimes parents get preoccupied in their own life, or they're trying to survive or trying to get some sense of security for the entire family. If they don't have the time to hear you, it doesn't mean they don't love you, of course. It just means that they're preoccupied and they're not aware that they're necessarily hurting you. So be open to possibilities, be open to understanding others. Even if they don't understand you, it will give you a sense of freedom, because instead of blindly taking on board, and I hope I'm not rambling too much, but if you take on the fact that they're suffering, you'll recognize that their insight is either biased or it's narrow-minded because of their own suffering. And that will just mean that if they judge you or if there's an issue, you don't take it so personal, because you realize they can't see, not fully into you anyway, not at that time. Otherwise, they'd offer you understanding and respect. So it's worth considering. Everything, respect has to be earned. Understanding, insight, you have to feel supported to take it on board. If someone does support you, question what they say. I feel anything more on that, Linda? I feel like that's a key thing in this topic, this conversation. That just because someone doesn't see doesn't mean they don't care. It just means that they're caught up in their own mind, in their own emotions, their own thoughts. You don't know what's going on in the other person. There might be some trouble at home. There might be some trouble somewhere. There might be stress with exams.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means purely they're preoccupied and they're worried within themselves.
Yeah.
They're not always going to give you priority, and they need to prioritize their own state of mind, their own emotions. And when that has more stability, then your connection with them, if you choose, can be enhanced. But if you can offer them stability and understanding, even if they can't, their walls can come down and they'll value you. Not always, but ultimately, on some level, they'll see there's something about you, and that they'll admire that on some level. They might even resent it if it's something that's the other issue.
Mm.
If some people have insecurities and you have a quality they like, they might, and this happens a lot with teenagers, they might lash out because of a sense of jealousy. I remember when I was in India, I'll just finish with this, an experience where I had a friend could say that I had a guru in India, and we'd do something, an offering for a guru, and everyone did that willingly because what they offered us was heart and something beautiful. And I knew someone that said, "I'm not doing that. I was going to meditate," and they refused. And I thought, "What? What? How can you refuse?" Like, and I had issues with this person. And I realized within a couple of days I was meditating. So I wanted to just devote my whole time to meditating when I was in India. And the only person, the Sangha, that said no. And so I had issues. And then within a couple of days, I realized that the quality that their strength to say no, I actually on some level was jealous and admired that strength. It was, and looking back, it's the right thing to do. I'm glad I did things. I had to sort of shake the rugs and clean certain aspects, certain parts of the ashram. And that was the right thing to do. But I was jealous of that quality in the other person to say no when everyone else said yes. And I realized though that, okay, it's not them, it's me. I want that quality. And having that quality now, if I was in the same situation, I would not have said no. I would have still done, served. I still would have offered something. But so it's important to recognize that not everyone's against you. Some people want your qualities, and some people, there's aspects that when others feel lacking and you have in abundance or qualities that they would like to have, it's not always obvious. It can come across as being teased or anger or judgment or something else. So it's not all about you. Often ideas of others or from others is a projection or an idea of another person. Anyone that truly sees you and sees through your suffering and truly sees you will be kind and will love you on some level. That's my understanding. They will see past all the bullshit, excuse the French, but they will, even when you can't. And ultimately, they're the friends you want, and they're not always easy to find. But I'm lucky. I've got a few friends that are absolutely like that, and I feel like a blessed man. And even when life has its challenges, you just feel that support, even if no one says anything to you. You just know it's there, and you have friends like that because you can offer that to them, and it's reciprocated. So stand fast in yourself, learn to understand yourself, question everything that doesn't serve you, and there'll be more coming up.